first trait of the successful implementations are a focus on business processes and requirements. A lot of companies think that this might not be an important task because they are going to adopt a new ERP system and they're going to throw out the old business processes, the old inefficient way of doing things. So focusing on business processes and requirements really isn't important in these organizations' minds when you have the mindset of, why look at business processes until you've selected a software, until you start to implement the software. At that point, you can just adopt the best practices within the software. And that really is a very misguided recipe for failure. And unfortunately, that's a message or an approach that a lot of ERP vendors will sell in the marketplace. They'll say, don't worry about your processes as they are now. Don't even look at or think about business processes until you buy our software, at which point you can just adopt the best practices in our software to automate your business. And that really is a utopian fantasy that doesn't exist. And the companies that try to do that are dramatically more likely to fail in their implementations. Now, the ones that succeed are the ones that look at their business processes first, not that they want to automate their current business processes, but they start by understanding the current processes, documenting the current processes, defining where the pain points and the opportunities for improvement are, and then translating all of that into business requirements that do two things. One is it helps them select software that's going to be the best fit for their organizations, which is going to have a very material impact on how quickly and how effectively they're able to implement those solutions. And secondly, those processes and requirements serve as kind of a blueprint for further defining and refining the details of those processes during implementation, so that when the technical consultants come in to configure the software, they have kind of a blueprint or a framework to work from, rather than spinning their wheels trying to decide how the business is going to look going forward. And the the misnomer, the urban legend, if you will, of best practices in ERP software is fairly make-believe, I guess you could say, in that there is no such thing as best practices. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, there's some areas like accounts payable or general ledger, chart of accounts, just kind of real basic vanilla processes in most organizations where, sure, there is some best practice baked into the software. But when you're talking about manufacturing or servicing your customers, or how you even how you report information, most of those things are business-driven types of processes that that you're probably going to do better than most ERP software would just straight out of the box. So it's really important to define how you want your business to look and run, and let that drive how the software gets configured, because the ERP software is so flexible today. There's so many different ways to do even the simplest of business processes that it's not enough to say we're just going to use best practices, because best practices could be one of 10 different options that you have in setting up a purchase order process workflow, for example. So it really is misguided to say let's just pick up the best practices and go with it. You really do have to define how you want your processes to look and work, and use that to drive how the software ends up being configured. So you want to use these requirements to define and prioritize your key requirements, define and refine those beginning in selection and refining those through implementation. And you also want to make sure you're not overemphasizing a software's technical capabilities if they're not aligned with your needs. So each software package in the marketplace has its own unique bells and whistles and things that are pretty cool that make them powerful and robust, but none of those things really matter unless it matters to your business needs. And that's really the important part of defining your requirements first, so you're not drawn in or making decisions based on irrelevant technical features and capabilities. The second thing to do as a best practice, or what the best-in-class ERP implementing organizations are doing, is they're focused on achieving a positive ROI early in their projects. They are not kind of deferring that or just saying we need to implement ERP just because we have to, because our old system's outdated. That's a common reason for implementing ERP, but the ones that succeed and have the most effective implementations with the best results are the ones that also define what the ROI looks like and how they expect that ROI to look. And that is where you define a comprehensive business case prior to committing to the solution, and then not only creating a business case, but creating it in a way where business benefits are as tangible as the cost. And so many companies just want to focus on the cost and understand how much the implementation is going to cost them. And by the way, most companies aren't even good at that part of it, but that is where they focus most of their time. And then they kind of just gloss over the whole benefit side of things, thinking, well, the benefits don't matter because it's certainly going to be better than what we've got, and the old system's dying anyway, so what does it really matter what our benefits are? Well, it really does matter because, first of all, you're going to be leaving millions of dollars on the table potentially if you don't have those defined metrics laid out up front to help the organization focus on what kind of results they want to get. And secondly, during the implementation, if you don't have those benefits laid out in a business case, decision-making and project governance becomes extremely challenging, and you're in effect flying blind without that business case. For example, if and when your project team comes to you and says, hey, we want to customize the software, and it will happen, it's just a matter of when those types of requests start happening in your project, you're not going to have any framework to make that decision other than to say we're not going to do any customization, which, as we saw earlier, is pretty unrealistic given what the reality of most implementations are. But without that framework, you're not going to be able to make a decision on whether that customization is worth the cost and the risk of making that customization. If you have a business case that shows, okay, I could spend $50,000 on this customization and it's going to deliver $250,000 of benefit per year, then it may very well be a decent investment or a good adjusted risk-reward play because it may be worth the risk and the cost to get that $250,000 of annual benefit. But if you look at the business case and see that there is no material impact on your business benefits, then it's a lot easier to justify turning down or denying a customization request such as that. So those are just two reasons why the business case and the ROI focus is so important. And long term, the most important reason is that it really sets those baseline and targets for key performance measures, and it gets your organization and your team focused on doing what it takes to implement the software and the processes in a way that delivers those results. And it also provides a mechanism for post-implementation performance, post-implementation audits. So if you go in as we do with many of our clients, we'll go in and do the post-implementation audits to see where you're achieving the benefits you expect and where you're not. And you just have to swallow it down and accept the fact that you're not going to achieve all the benefits you expect right away. So once you get past that, then it becomes a lot less daunting to go do the post-implementation audit and look at where the deficiencies are and what you can do to improve those results over time. And a lot of times they're pretty easy fixes, and it's a lot of low-hanging fruit to optimize benefits. It's things like refresher training, or a process is breaking down because it wasn't well defined, or maybe the software needs to be configured in a certain way, or certain functionality wasn't turned on in the software, and therefore the benefits aren't being delivered. So there's a lot of, when we do these post-implementation audits, it's pretty amazing how low-hanging some of that fruit is to get the results that are expected. And when you look at all the time and money that's invested in the implementation leading up to that point, it's pretty immaterial to spend a little bit more time and money to do these post-implementation audits to really get more bang for your buck. In fact, it's hands down the most cost-effective or the highest ROI activity you can do is the post-implementation stuff, because by then you've already spent 95% or more of your budget, and your time and effort has already been spent. You might spend pretty minor amounts to try and get to that next level, but the results you get out of it are pretty extreme.